Yalda Hakim there in Pennsylvania. Now, the government says it's going to try far harder to recoup the cost of NHS healthcare given to foreigners in Britain. The issue was in the public eye today partly because of the BBC Two documentary Hospital that revealed a rather unusual case of a Nigerian woman and her quadruplets born prematurely. She'd been refused entry to the US and was taken ill on a plane away from the US, but ended up costing the NHS here £330,000. Here's a clip.
The thing is, Priscilla, the hospital bills are going to be quite high.
I don't plan to come here.
No, I understand
The situation has changed.
You're going to be in England for a while, aren't you? You understand that? So, your husband, is your husband in Nigeria? He is. Will he be coming over at all under these circumstances? He won't. When you're a bit more stable, you come out of ITU, I'll come and see you again. Okay, I do understand that it's a very difficult time for you. You know, but we do need to talk about the charges for hospital treatment.
Well, also today, the Public Accounts Committee of MPs has said the system for recouping costs is chaotic. The words health tourism are used a lot in this kind of conversation, but it can be misleading. Our policy editor, Chris Cook, is with me. Health tourism, people visiting the UK to use the NHS. Just give us the kind of scale of that and the sort of magnitude of these effects.
Well, back in 2013, the government commissioned some research into the cost of people specifically coming to the UK just to use the NHS, the so-called health tourists. And what they found was basically it's a relatively small part of the generalised cost of foreign people coming to the UK and happening to be ill here. So if we put up a graph, what we can show is that back in 2013, what the government estimated was that around £200 million was spent on so-called health tourists. It could be a bit more, could be a bit less. That was their central estimate. That's a bit less than if we look at the cost of just European people getting ill in the UK. So that's EU, Norwegian, Swiss people. That's about 300 million quid. If you look at students who are not from the EU, that's about £450 million. And finally, if you just look at people who've come to the UK from elsewhere in the world, it's about £1 billion we spend on care for them while they're here.
But we do get some of that money back.
That's right. These are gross numbers.
Right.
We're part of a scheme with other European countries that enables us to charge their states for the care of other Europeans. We are not very good at recouping that money, though. So of the sort of 300 million or so that we could have got for other European patients, we only got about £50 million back. We can also charge patients from, no, we can't charge students, but we can charge patients from elsewhere in the world for some of their care. Again, though, we only charge about £25 million in that specific year. So that's why the government is really keen, actually, to really clamp down on this stuff.
And the money they're looking to get, is that going to make a big difference, small difference, tiny difference to NHS budgets?
These are small numbers. We're in a world of small numbers. So the total universe there is 2 billion. They're looking to recoup. In their dream, which they're not going to hit, is 500 million. And a big chunk of that has come from just taxing students. It's not actually going to be from recouping anything else. Fundamentally, they're giving NHS hospitals incentives to find foreign people to charge and to foreign people whose bills we can get for another state to pay. But it's countercultural for lots of people who work in hospitals to go around, checking the passports of people in their care.
Chris, thanks. Well, joining me now is the chair of the Royal College of GPs, Professor Helen Stokes-Lampard, and the cancer surgeon Marion Thomas, who is a campaigner on health tourism. Marion, we saw in that clip an NHS person saying to a mother who'd lost a child, or 2 children, I think, at that point, we need to talk about the bill. Are you comfortable with that as a kind of an ethos in the NHS?
Well, that case is exceptional, and there's some tragic elements to that case.
Yeah. And
perhaps we can just set that aside for just a moment. But the fact about maternity tourism is that it's very common. For example, last year at St George's Hospital, it was reported that there were 1,800 foreign ladies who had delivered babies there. And in retrospect, 870 of those, approximately, were ineligible for free NHS care. So that's an extent.
What would you do in those cases? Because those people, you're probably not going to be able to recoup a large amount from them. You can chase them, but you're not going to get very much. What is the practical thing? You ask them to show their passport when they come in and they're pregnant?
The point about passports is just to do with non-urgent care for elective cases. is very little you can do for maternity cases because the government is determined that anything to do with maternity is immediately necessary, and therefore they have to be treated. They are charged, as you say, but we know that only 16% of invoices that are issued are honoured.
Right. Well, Helen,
Yeah.
why is it so difficult to just charge people for at least the non-elective, the non-emergency, the elective care? I mean, what's wrong with that?
We just don't have the infrastructure to do it. Because our NHS, our wonderful NHS, is free at the point of need, we don't have a charging system set up. There's no universal way of finding out if a patient should or shouldn't pay. So when you walk into a hospital, for a start, you and I don't carry any ID or documentation because we expect free treatment. When you go and see your GP, you don't carry anything because there's no reason to. If we wanted to charge everybody who theoretically would need to pay something, we'd have to set up a huge infrastructure right across the
So you'd have to ask me, am I eligible,
Every
in
single
order
patient.
to get the people who are not
Absolutely.
eligible? Is that really so difficult? Is that really so difficult for hundreds of millions of pounds?
Well, 1.3 million patients see their GP every single day. Let's get this in perspective. Just in England, we've got 7,500 GP surgeries. That's a whole heap of infrastructure, people, systems, training, not let alone the card. What would you issue ID cards? Would you use passports? What would
That
you
would
use?
be an
as the-
idea, wouldn't it? I mean, that would make it much easier, actually, wouldn't it?
It
'Cause
would. It's a debate
it
we could
happens
have.
in lots of other countries, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Other countries do charge people.
They do, because they've got the charging structure. They don't have a health system free at the point of need. And so this is small amounts of money compared to the whole NHS. So if we want to put the upfront infrastructure in and spend hundreds of millions setting the structure up, we could do it. It would be a long time to get the return on
But
investment.
it does take ID cards. It does take an infrastructure, doesn't it, Myra?
It does.
It's a huge change, and it is really for a relatively small amount.
That's why it's not a small amount. The whole point is that what Chris was telling us a moment ago, what these management companies were saying in their reports, that they accept that only a tiny number of people were identified, so that the problem is much bigger than the government thinks. But what I've suggested is that for elective care in hospitals, I understand it's not all of the patients, and I fully understand that it doesn't involve general practice, but elective care in hospital is one of the biggest costs. And what I suggested is that patients should present a passport and a utility bill in their name when they register.
There are loads of people who don't have utility bills in their name. I mean,
Then every
I live
hospital,
with people who don't have utility bills.
every hospital has got an overseas visitors officer, and I'm suggesting there's a screening tool. That's all, and then.
But hang on, no, you have the passport. Does it work? I mean, could your receptionist check on somebody's utility bill or?
Do you know how difficult it is to truly identify a legitimate passport? There are a lot of subtle features. I'm certainly not trained to do it. I'm not sure that many people are.
agree.
And you actually need proper equipment to scan a passport to say that it's legitimate, and that's the difficulty we're dealing with. So passports aren't the answer.
If I said to you, Myron, it would take ID cards, you're not going to make this happen unless you have ID cards which have on them residence entitlement in the UK. If I said that's the price of it, would you go for residence ID
Well,
cards?
it's going to have to happen in
had
some form or other. There's got to have to be some personal identification to prove that you're entitled to NHS care. That's what happens in any health system that's comparable to ours. Anywhere, Sweden, Holland, France, Germany, Australia, wherever you go,
They will have them.
we have to have it.
Okay. Helen, Myron, thanks both.
Thank you.